Hi Mitch, my name is Mont27p and I'm the animator and director for Playverse Piglin, here with the behind the scenes for the animation. PvP for shorts was a bit of a shorter animation, but still pretty happy with how things turned out. Production wise I spent around 4 months on this, beginning just after speedrun, which is considered pretty long for a 4-minute animation. I was in the middle of moving house along with some other personal things, so I lost a lot of time at certain periods. Regardless, the last month, or more realistically the last 2 or 3 weeks, I probably got more than like 50% of what I needed to get done for the entire project. So it's been pretty hectic, but I'm happy to finally bring this project to a close. So PvP concept-wise was actually one of the first projects I considered doing way back in 2020 when I first applied. So the first few versions of this are pretty old. I ended up putting it off for a while because the original idea was pretty short and simple. After my last animation speedrun, I wanted to do something shorter, and even a series of shorter projects. I went back into this portal idea and fleshed it out. The basic concept was actually inspired by one of the old Bad Piggies episodes, where 2 piggies either side of a portal are trying to keep a nail pushed into their side of the wall. Same concept went here, except with a portal and extended it into a full-fleshed animation. I created it so that we have really intense moments, but we never really see each other directly, so a bit of a different take on combat. Playverse Piglin was also a nice reference to PvP, which normally stands for Player vs Player instead of Piglin. It would have been nice to include some really unique and dumb ideas, but I ended up keeping most of them related to what is seen in Minecraft, minus some like the catapult and unique take on the vines. Scene-wise, there's probably a lot of stuff I'll skip since most of this was just normal animation, but let's take a look at the production. Lighting-wise for the Nether, I already had the base lighting set up thanks to what Iron Lord 3009 did in speedrun. I was able to just bring over the settings on lighting from those Nether scenes and boop, we got our lighting. To then light up objects, I mainly used area lamps to emphasize shadows and light areas, keyframing them around each shot before doing final touches like the particle ambience. I ran into a few render problems early on which was creating a lot of noise, which I was eventually able to figure out. The default node setup on materials that emit light was really messing me up. Scene 2, we start to see Steve and the Piglin interact through the portal. I wanted to keep things pretty peaceful at the beginning, just throwing through some rocks. Each time an object passes through the portal, I had this little particle system emit a few ender particles. Otherwise, I felt it would be pretty flat. I would have liked to play around with effects and lighting a lot more in general. I had these other concept effects that I used in an older thumbnail that could have been interesting. The Piglin in particular was pretty fun but tedious to animate in some of these shots. Shots like these, for example, I went for a very cartoony and fast-paced style, animating things flopping around frame by frame. Again, like in speedrun, I did a lot of the frame by frame work on the feet, at times even custom animating walks as opposed to using loops, which I normally did. Another little touch I did on the Piglin was animating their floppy ears. I probably could have just left the ears, but I wanted to go for a more cartoony look, so I had them bounce and react to different movements. The conflict really initiates when Steve eats one of the crimson fungus, which ends up hurting him, taking it as a threat, which I probably could have exaggerated more. From this point on, things do start getting a little dumb and intense. Scene 3 is probably a good moment to talk about the map, since there aren't a whole heap of other things here. The main portal area in the overworld was a build I created. Funnily enough, it's actually an extension to the map I created for Minecraft. I'm slowly getting in and expanding the map for different things I need it for. I even ended up using it for the racing collab I hosted on the community channel. I'll then also leave a link to the village map I used for the recruiting scene, as that one is not mine. Netherwise, I spent quite some time searching across different seeds from Open Bastion and the portal area. I ended up doing a lot of world editing, but those were a little more straightforward. I'll probably release these maps and seeds at some point, like I did for Mineshaft on my channel, so keep an eye out for that. Now we get into the more montage type scene as things really get intense. A lot of these start out with the more typical Minecraft features, so not a lot to mention on some of these, but effects like the portal transparency are probably worth a mention. I learnt a little effect that David did way back in animation life, where looking through a transparent face can determine what the material will look like. I had a transparent plane lined up on the portal, and made the dog texture behave so if a part of its body is looking through a transparent object, it will appear as transparent. I reused this effect a few times throughout the animation when things pass through portals. I did also get messed up in some shots since other transparent pixels from grass and second layers on player rigs hid parts of these objects, which was annoying. Like the catapult, I'll leave a link to the design in the description document, but essentially I took the design and rigged it a bit, allowing for it to swing around, and, well, be a catapult. In scene, I used constraints to set the camera alongside the gold block so I didn't have to go and animate the camera following it, which probably wouldn't turn out as good, so that was nice. Then we get probably the most interesting and most chaotic idea, the vines. So I ended up using what I learned from watching a tutorial on Tactranks actually, which was using objects to follow a path. I'm thinking of doing a quick demo or tutorial on my channel to show exactly how I did it, but to quickly explain, an object with an array was set to follow a path or curve. The vertices on this path can be moved by adding hooks, so you can then have control outside of edit mode and move sections in real time. This was still pretty tricky to put into effect though, because everything is moving individually, and really selling realistic movement of a quick moving vine was pretty tricky. It was honestly just a lot of trial and error, trying to offset and move different parts of the vine, still giving it nice shape and believability. There was a particular part where the vine flipped itself around, but I had to make sure the loop still stayed in place. It wanted to keep unfolding as well as just being a nuisance and clipping into the body, so there are a lot of things to keep track of, but otherwise it's very interesting to animate. Similar to last scene, as we start to close out the sequence, I use more paths to map the movement of the arrows. Paths are honestly just really useful. When Steven the player realizes things are getting too intense, he makes the decision to close down the portal and stop things from going further. At this point the Piglin realize that they received gold during all the chaos. This was something I wanted to exaggerate more in the earlier scene, as we really only get that single shot of people grabbing the gold, then later catapulting it, although we do briefly hear and see a bell landing as well, which I did want to show more clearly but was running out of time. With the connections of the portal broken, relighting and sending something through caused a new portal to be built beside the old one. This was one thing I did test out. With the players and Piglins both receiving loot, the earlier of which I just filled with bartering loot, they realise the action is pointless, and they go their separate ways. Later in which the process is hinted to have started again with another portal generating next to a baby Piglin. Around this time I was already going all in for around 2 weeks, but I then just moved straight into bloopers and thumbnails. Finished those, did all the editing and prepared things for release. It was a nice little experience. There's moments that I would have liked to exaggerate in the montage scene, had it been longer and had I more time. I would have liked to spend more time on lighting and effects, as in the end I really only spent like 2 days on those, which is incredibly short amount of time to spend on that. Overall I'm still pretty happy with how things turned out though. A nice short comedic animation that has a simple but hopefully interesting story, playing on a different idea of combat. I'm excited to move on to some other ideas I planned. I'm not certain on what I want to do next, but I have some cool stuff I want to get into next year that I'm really excited to share. For now, I'm just trying to figure out something shorter to hopefully get something out again by the end of the year. That would be nice. I'll leave a document in the description below for any assets I decide to give out, and I'll update that over time for those interested. But otherwise, I hope everyone enjoyed the short animation. The other animators are going through their own projects, which are looking awesome so far, so be hyped for those. And yeah, I shall see you all probably later in the year with another animation from me. Until then, bye.